Hello and welcome to the Society with Fatma Shaheen at PTV World. Considering the fact that International Women's Day has just passed, today on our show we'll be talking about women empowerment and overall gender equality in the Pakistani society today. We'll be talking about the contributions, the challenges that women not only in Pakistan, rather world over face. In this regard, it's very important to talk and of course pinpoint towards the theme for International Women's Day 2025, which is Accelerate Action, which means essentially that a call to action is being made so as to urge societies to move beyond symbolic gestures and to commit towards a real and structural change. The question then is to what extent in Pakistan have we been able to do just that? This is something upon which we'll be shedding light today. We'll be talking about, the strides that Pakistani women have made in not only one, rather quite a few various different industries, be it the media industry, be it the technology sector, be it the sector of medicine, or even for that matter, law. And whereas, of course, we do appreciate the fact that we now see more and more working women coming forward. The question then is that are these women generally being accepted, that too in dominant positions in the Pakistani society? In this regard, we'll not only be talking about the various laws which do exist so as to overall empower women, but also the very notable and definitely progressive and well-intentioned initiatives brought in by the government, more particularly by the Punjab government, which aim to empower Pakistani women overall. Whereas, of course, we do appreciate the fact that all these initiatives are very welcoming. What we do need to then also understand at a very basic level is that to what extent do societal mindsets actually dictate the extent to which such initiatives can actually be implemented in letter and spirit. In this regard, we'll also be talking about the working of a very important office that is FOSPA, which stands for the Federal Ombudsperson for Protection Against Harassment of Women at Workplace. How do we now see this very office working to overall ensure that women in Pakistan, they do get harassment free and a discrimination free environment overall? We'll be talking about the need for there to be reform both in terms of policies and overall institutional strengthening when it comes to making women empowerment a reality in the Pakistani society today. All of this today, that too with an extremely eminent panel. Let me introduce you to my today's panel. My first panelist for today's show is Ms. Bushra Butt. She's a senator of PML-N and she's also the chairperson, Standing Committee on Federal Education and Professional Training. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Bushra. Via Zoom, we'll be joined by Ms. Fauzia Viqar. She is the Federal Ombudsperson for Protection Against Harassment of Women at Workplace. Assalamu alaikum, madam, and welcome to the show.
Walaikum salam, Fatma, and thank you for having me here.
And via telephone line, we'll be joined by Ms. Nadia Hussain. She's an actor, she's a model, and she's also been a former talk show host. Assalamu alaikum ji and welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. Now, before we start the discussion on today's topic, let's have a look at this brief report.
Women's Day is more than just a celebration. It's a call to action across Pakistan. Positive changes are happening as more women break barriers in politics, media, and STEM, proving that representation matters. Legal protections against harassment are in place and awareness campaigns are empowering women to speak up, while stronger cyber laws are making online spaces safer. Economic empowerment is on the rise, with initiatives promoting financial independence and skill development for women. Education policies are also creating new opportunities, ensuring more girls gain access to schools and higher education. Importantly, men are stepping up as allies, recognizing that gender equality benefits society as a whole. With real accountability and policy-driven change, Pakistan is moving towards a future where women are safe, educated, and economically independent. Together, we are building a stronger, more inclusive nation. And now, let's hear the remarks of Dr. Sana Naz, aesthetician, dermatologist.
Women empowerment is not about just breaking barriers, it is also about self-love and self-confidence. As an aesthetic physician, I'm truly honored by seeing women in my daily routine by taking care of themselves and investing in themselves. So my message would be that take care of yourself and invest in yourself so you can feel more confident and you can feel more empowered.
Welcome back from the break. Ms. Fauzia, I would like to start the conversation with you. So when we do talk about gender equality, we do understand the fact that according to the reports of a World Economic Forum, it remains unfortunately still to be a distant goal, projected to be achieved by the year 2158. Now, having said that, madam, at a very basic level, when we do talk about all these conversations related to women empowerment, related to gender equality, what is very important is that we also appreciate the fact that these conversations, they just don't remain to the extent of being lounge talk. How do you, as a very prominent and strong advocate for women's rights, and propose, can we work towards bringing tangible change post these conversations too, and that too particularly in a context which then suits us given our socio-cultural dynamics? How would you comment on this, madam?
To begin with, Fatma, gender disparity is not just our problem, it's a global problem. And most countries of the world still face gender disparity. As a matter of fact, it was the UN Secretary General who recently said that at the current rate of change, the global gender gap will not close for another 100 years. And he's talking about other countries also. In Pakistan also, we faced with a similar dilemma. As a matter of fact, it's a little more acute in Pakistan, as shown by the World Economic Forum report. Your question was beyond conversations. Well, beyond conversation has happened already. There have been multiple laws, there are policies, there are facilitative or supportive measures in place. For instance, facilities like daycare centers or women's hostels, working women's hostels, helplines for women. My own institution, which is the Ombudsperson, specifically for protection against harassment, which is for everyone, but women are the primary complainants. But having said that, the conversation was I guess the question was, are conversations important, or do we need more to translate that into tangible
Also,
change?
madam,
And I
that
think,
this should be done in a context which is then very considerate of our socio-cultural dynamics to even religious context, because a lot of times you also come across people who might still unfortunately construe women empowerment or gender equality to be too much of a Western concept. So how do you go about debunking myths like these?
so uh, uh, I think we need to be very clear that gender equality was first pronounced through, or rather promulgated through, the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And Islam was the first religion to empower women, to give them a share in inheritance, to ban the practice of burying women alive. So this myth that gender equality is an imported phenomenon is an absolute myth. To debunk this, of course, our laws are there, and we have to remember that none of our laws are against the principles of Islam. All our laws are in consonance with the injunctions of Islam. Hence, the laws which are passed tell us that Islam or religion and women's equality are absolutely the same, are pursuing absolutely the same goal. Hence the question whether conversations are important. And I feel conversations are very important because conversations build narrative. Societies are built or shaped with narrative. And if we have a counter narrative in place, perhaps women's situation is going to become, or rather gender disparity is going to be achieved faster than we are seeing at the moment.
Definitely, madam, and this is something that needs to be prioritized like so many other issues, be it political issues, be it economic issues. I'll come towards you, Ms. Bushra, and I would want you to add to this further. So moving past the conversation bit, I think something on which you very rightly so deliberated upon. When we do talk about the very important role of legislators like yourself, we have seen that over a period of time, not one, rather quite a few very pro-women laws have been passed. But when we talk about the very particular work of, again, leaders like yourself, female politicians, who are leading by way of example, how difficult is it for people like you to be able to exert your authority that way? A lot of times we see female politicians or even women generally leading by way of example, they might be criticized, they might not be taken as seriously as their male counterparts, or even their competence that might be misjudged, keeping in mind perhaps so many other factors. So how would you comment on this from your own particular experience?
Fatma, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure being on your show.
Thank
because
you so much.
always pick up on issues that really matter.
Thank you.
And like Fauzia rightly mentioned that it's beyond conversations now. It's about legislation, it's about policy making, it's about making that room for everyone, for women as well. But you know what? I have a different observation now. because being a legislator for good 12 years and fighting for the rights, be it about legislation, be it about anything for that matter, having to see women in those key positions in decision-making roles, it's more about a society thing. It's about a patriarchal mindset that we live in. And it's not just politics only, it's about corporate world as well. And recently, I went to this university and we were talking about women and women rights, and I saw an audience filled with women and men. And you know what that made me think? That maybe the change that we desire, it's not happening full throttle because we are fighting this war alone in isolation.
Right.
Why do not we involve the men, or
we engage men as allies?
We engage and we discuss it. Because you see, now it's becoming about financial needs.
Of course.
It's become more practical.
Right.
It's about two people earning.
But moving on, coming back to my original question, which was that, when we do talk about the influx of women leaders, we do see quite a few women leaders have paved the way for furthermore too in the Pakistani society. But the question remains, is that level of acceptability, recognition, faith perhaps in their leadership still there? How can we overall strive to make leadership more accessible, that too particularly for women leaders without scrutiny?
You see, now things right now look very favorable, especially now having for the first female CM. So you see women in a lot of key positions and in decision-making positions. And yes, things are changing for the better. And you do get to see, like even in the federal cabinet, you see a younger federal minister, Shahzad's there, Rumina's there. So yes, but obviously it's never enough. So you are representing you make most half of the population. Women make half of the population, so they need to be in key positions in order to make decision-making roles, so that they can make good decisions for themselves and represent themselves.
Right. And the rest of the female population as well.
Yes. So it's never enough, but yes, we're in the right direction. And Punjab has changed completely. Like if I tell you 10 years back when I joined politics, or 12 years back, having a deputy speaker in the Punjab Assembly was unthinkable.
Right.
You see? And now having the first female CM, I think it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Definitely, and this is something that we do see being translated in other sectors. So, for example, the judiciary, we now see two
it's all about exposing people to a different idea, and then acceptability comes in, and then obviously that just paves the way for other women
to join in.
Yes.
On which I'll come towards you, Ms. Nadia, and I would want you to add to this further. So we are talking about, working women, we are talking about empowered women. In this regard, I would want you to share your experience too. We do come across women who would want to make big, who are ambitious with regards to their career, but somehow or the other, they also have to fulfill their other household responsibilities and the responsibilities that they do have as a wife, as a mother, as a sister, and whatnot. So when it comes to having that ideal work-life balance, that too for Pakistani working women, how do you feel can they strive to have just that too in a way that they have that option to dictate what their priorities are, how particularly will they then get to divide their time? So how has your experience been as a working Pakistani woman in this regard, and what tips would you give to the people out there keeping in mind this very issue?
Honestly, I don't think there is an ideal balance between work and life. I think that some things or the other are going to get compromised. Sometimes if you're working, then of course you might not be able to give ample time to your house, to your children, sometimes even to your own husband, if you have those kinds of working hours. Otherwise, you could be more of a homebound person. You could be working from home where you are giving more time to your children, giving more time to your house, giving more time to other household duties, and at times then your work instead is suffering. So yes, I think that somewhere or the other a compromise does have to be made. But the thing is that you have to understand and realize where to make the compromise. If there is an important project that you really, really, really have to do, and you have to miss out on your child's sports day or anything of that sort for that matter, then sometimes that compromise does have to be made. It is your choice to make that compromise. So I really don't think that there is a complete ideal balance. You have to prioritize things, where you need to prioritize your work at times and you need to prioritize your household at times. But honestly saying, it is very, very difficult for women, particularly who come from a middle class background, to ideally and perfectly manage their work and their life, their home life, their domestic life, because there is a lot of struggle financially. So if they don't have that kind of help at home, then that becomes a very big struggle. If they don't have the staff to manage, or if their husbands are not even that supportive or in doing household work, then it becomes a very, very big challenge for them.
Right, madam. Moving on, Ms. Fauzia, I'll come towards you and I would want you to briefly comment on what she just said. So all in all, what she's been pointing towards is there can't be an ideal work-life balance because everybody would be having different priorities at different point in time. So how do you then propose, without having that perfect balance, we can still at a very basic level, working women particularly, strive towards having at least some level of an optimum thing? Because you see, then this is open argument. You can't just be focused completely on your work and you just can't be focused completely on your household responsibilities and on your personal commitments. So at some level, how do you propose, can we have those priorities set straight?
Well, to begin with, whenever anybody asks me if there's a way of achieving a good work-life balance, I tell them if you're a woman and if you're an aspiring, especially young woman, then you can forget about work-life balance. There is no balancing. Women have to put in twice as much work if they want to be reckoned with as an equally competent and thinking human being. At the moment, especially, but hopefully it'll change. Things are going to improve. But what can help achieve a better work-life balance is flexibility in the ways of work, of course. When COVID happened, a lot of us switched to remote working. That's when the world realized you don't have to be in office 9 to 5 to be able to deliver. And therefore, what is needed is for the employer or for the seniors to understand that work has to be deliverables based wherever possible. And if it is possible to have deliverables based work, then make a provision for it. Secondly, facilities are extremely important. For a woman not to fret about her children being neglected at home, it's important to have a daycare center at her workplace. Shorter working hours if possible. Leaves, maternity leaves, and enforcement of the Maternity Rights Act. So better facilities, and then of course transportation. Women spend so much time waiting for transportation, right, or having to rely on the men in their family to reach their workplace, that it really ruins the day for them. They also have to, when they're moving on public transport themselves, they have to reckon with harassment in public places, which is really abundant at the moment. So in order to deal with a better work-life balance, we'll have to first work on these structural issues and a new way of thinking towards work for both men and women, but more so for women if we want them to have this good work-life balance.
Taking on from where you just left, now we are talking about ensuring that women do get that right to work in a discrimination-free and harassment-free environment. In this regard, we do understand that since your appointment in March 2023, FOSPA has made quite a few strides. Overall, we've seen that statistically, there's a substantial increase in the complaints being made to your office with each passing year, which definitely shows a greater public, trust in your office. But moving on, we've also seen very monumental decisions given by your office, which very clearly reiterate the fact that when we do talk about workplace harassment, it isn't, just to be construed to be sexual in nature. It can also be something which then relates to gender discrimination per se. But overall, if you are to talk about the practical impact of all these decisions and the working of FOSPA under your tenure, how empowered do you feel is an average Pakistani working woman today, that too, post the working of FOSPA and of course all these monumental decisions that FOSPA has actually passed?
Thank you very much. FOSPA is a very, very small player in the whole societal game which is played and which is, like Bushra said earlier, marred by patriarchy or overshadowed by patriarchy. We're still living in a man's world. I think organizations, institutions, and the decisions coming out of them are important in empowering people. Not just us. You will see recent Supreme Court judgments, and I can refer to two special judgments. One is the Nadia Naz review petition given by Justice Aisha Malik. The other one is a recent one, Muhammad Deen versus the province of Punjab through its secretary, which talk about the dignity of a person, which talk about the right to be free of discrimination, which talk about equal opportunity, which talk about hierarchy and how in positions of power, people, how they use power in order to discriminate against a particular gender. So that has been quite, I think, significant in somehow shaping the narrative today. And we have challenges, we have a lot of challenges, but I see on a daily basis women coming out, asking for their rights, and refusing to bow down. I feel that's a great sign. You and I being in these positions, Bushra joining us, Nadia joining us, in various professions, politics was a man's world, politics was a man's profession. But yet we see such bright women and young women at that joining in and playing their part, actually contributing a lot, because researchers have shown that women are contributing more to politics in Pakistan than men are. So we have these examples which tell us that things are going well, but these structural changes that I talked about earlier will have to be brought in to ensure there is no gender-based discrimination. Now people are recognizing the importance of girls, and the state, thankfully, I feel is a step ahead. The governments of Pakistan and the provinces have recognized that you cannot prosper as a nation if you leave nearly 50% of its population behind.
That's very right. And also, like you just yourself said, I think this is more of a human rights issue, because they say it right when they say the true measure of any society is also known by the way it actually treats its most vulnerable members, which of course includes girls and women too. I'll come towards you, Ms. Bushra. Now, she has talked about quite a few things. When we do talk about the very important role of the state, and in this regard, we have seen the Punjab government particularly spearheading so many women-led initiatives, whether it is in the introduction of, women safety apps, whether it is the introduction of, having daycare centers for women, or for that matter, even overall improving the accessibility of the girl childs to educational institutions. But what do you feel are the changes that we still do need to make in terms of our societal mindset and perceptions so as to be able to better implement these changes? What behaviors are those that we need to proactively change in this regard?
So Fatma, initially when you started off the conversation, you said that we need to move beyond conversation. And what Fauzia just mentioned, what you've just highlighted, these are a few initiatives that are needed to facilitate the process.
Right.
The idea of empowering a woman is not just getting a job. It's the minute a woman leaves the house, the government has to facilitate the whole process. How she reaches her workplace, when she reaches, is she safe? Does she have daycare? Does she have breastfeeding centers? Because she has to bring her child as well. So all of this. Other than that, I mentioned earlier on as well, I generally feel that we need to have these interactive dialogues with the society.
Right.
And we need to not only inform, and this is after a good 12-year observation, being in that position, that I realized that maybe we need to change our approach. We need a more inclusive society where we need to sit the men down as well, sit the women down as well. First of all, tell the women about their rights, tell them about what all there is, because most of the time media does not highlight the fact that—
That's so true.
You see, I always say media and legislators, we need to go hand in hand.
Right,
because
there needs
what
to be a
we
collaborative approach.
What we do needs to be, that kind of information needs to be forwarded to the people we're doing it for.
And also put in the educators here. I think
Exactly.
all the stakeholders in the larger picture should be on the same page.
So it has to be a joint effort from the society, a collaborated effort. And then we women, we need to stop fighting for this in isolation.
That's so true. We need to
bring the men on board and tell them about how they can help and how this will help them.
Right.
their children, because you see and we need to educate the parents as well.
It is definitely a very collective responsibility, which then is vested on the entire society at large. But since we are talking about empowering women here, I think it's very important to talk about the achievements that you've had also in this regard. Now, recently I was reading this article which talked about, the educational reform which was then brought under your leadership. And in this regard, it's very important to highlight that you have been advocating for the revival of student unions, and then you have also had that, achievement to your credit, that you have been able to regularize quite a few number of staff and teachers in this regard, female teachers particularly, and then the issue of a textbook more particularly, one with dealt with issues which perhaps could be biased towards a certain sect or strata of the society, that have been done away with. But when we do talk about educational reform, Ms. Bushra, these things, they are of course very progressive, they are very well intentioned, but do they at a very basic level also do away with that lack of access that an average girl child in Pakistan might have from the education system? Because we are looking at this issue very holistically.
You see, Fatma, this could be another factor, providing education. And yes, there is a financial crunch, and when you have limited resources, you'd rather spend in a boy child's education as compared to, and the government realizes this, and we have these stipends for girls as well. We want them to be part. And the ironic situation, it goes further. Like I mentioned earlier on, I went to this medical college, and the biggest problem when I was in Punjab was that these seats are on merit. And the girls always used to get more seats. But the sad part was the government would invest in these doctors, and the mother-in-laws would love to have daughter-in-laws who are doctors, but they would never ever would support them or promote them for working.
Right.
So that seat would go wasted. And most of the seats on merit, and I would have this argument at that time, was that why don't we give quota system, seats according to the quota, because women end up with more seats and then they never work, they're never part of the workforce, and these seats go wasted. So what I'm trying to say is that the government needs to realize this, give more, and they do, and most of the NGOs, USAID and all these, they also, with DFID as well, they also support the government for girl education. Because somehow our society is such, they'd rather invest in a boy child education.
Right. But when we talk about legislative bodies, at least that's my opinion here, I still feel that there's a lot of room for there to be greater representation of women. Now, you see, we have seen a greater representation of women in the medical field, like you yourself said, in the field of law as well, in judiciary, and then female politicians yourself as well. But when it comes to overall having greater representation of them in the parliament, I think that is also something that is very important in this regard. I'll come towards you, Nadia, and I would want you to add to this. So we are talking about, ensuring that yes, we do ensure women's participation in different spheres of national life. In this regard, we also appreciate the fact that media, as we all understand, is the fourth pillar of the state, and it's very important then to also talk about the role and of course the impact that media has in this regard. Now, when we do talk about dramas particularly, we have seen that women portrayals in Pakistani dramas, unfortunately, more often than not, are perhaps just reduced to them being shown as victims of various atrocities, or there being, mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts, which definitely is not a very accurate picture of the Pakistani society. So how do you, as an actor yourself, propose can we move past such storylines such that, we make dramas based on messages or themes which actually portray more strong, more empowered women, that too in a way which then amplifies Pakistani women's voices overall. So what are the changes that you as an actor would want to see ideally in our drama storylines in this regard?
Well, regarding dramas, actually, I truly believe there is this constant cat and mouse chase regarding, what the audience wants to watch versus what the productions make. Sometimes the productions spend a lot of money in making content that is very positive, that is very uplifting. But sadly, the audience does not watch that. There are no ratings that are coming for such projects. And of course, that is something that eventually for the production, it's a loss, because an expensive, good moral project has been made, But if it is not watched, then it is actually pointless for the production to spend that kind of money on another project, because at the end of the day, they are also doing it for the sake of business, and they do not, I mean, nobody is going to work for a loss, for a constant loss. So, like I said, that I think that there has been this constant cat and mouse chase of what the audience wants to watch versus what the productions would like to make, and what the actors would themselves like to portray themselves as characters. Of course, we all want to play positive characters. We all want to, especially the people who are in the media, who are a lot more progressive with their thoughts, they want to also portray such progressive ideas. But unfortunately, if the audience is not going to appreciate it and there is not going to be any viewership of it, then that's where the struggle comes. And I think eventually the productions give in and they make the kind of content that the audience wants to watch. And that's pretty much simply how it ends. It ends as a business prospect for the productions, then, that they have to make the kind of content that is profitable to them.
Right, Ms. Nadia. Coming towards you, Ms. Fauzia, I would want you to add to this. Now, we are talking about women empowerment in generally force of Pakistani women, achieving, at least striving to then bridge that gender gap. When we do talk about this, I think one thing that we must talk about in this regard is the role of technology and definitely AI, the day and age that we do live in this regard on women empowerment per se. At one end, we do see that yes, technology, social media has empowered Pakistani women, more particularly even rural women for that matter, with them having access to digital resources and perhaps, setting up businesses or being entrepreneurs, doing things that they perhaps might not have done before. But on the contrary, we also see, particularly with reference to AI, concerns have been raised. There are issues which, relate to AI having that danger of reinforcing discrimination, also for that matter, or, deepening the gender digital divide in this regard too. So overall, if we are to make that evaluation, that has technology, has AI in Pakistan, has had that impact of empowering Pakistani women, how would you make that, evaluation?
So whether it is technology or it is specifically in it AI, these are just tools. It's about how the tools are used. The same tools can be used to do good, and the same ones can be used to do bad, worse for people. Technology is a very enabling thing. It's important for women to adopt because it frees them up. It takes care of their transportation issues. They can work remotely. They can learn remotely also. And the technology has facilitated democratization of knowledge. It's extremely important. But if it is regulated properly and if there is equal access to it, you rightly pointed to the gender digital divide, because the access to technology, the access to information is still very gendered. A significantly lesser number of women have access to the internet when you compared to the number of men who have access to internet in Pakistan. So women can find technology very helpful. Cyber harassment, for instance, has become quite rampant with the coming of technology or without the increasing use of the internet. That is something that the regulators need to balance off. They need to make sure that it is not used in a manner that it ends up actually further marginalizing people or further disadvantaging populations. But I guess for us, in the broader conversation around technology, what is most important is to ensure that women are in the field of technical education and technical skill building. Because even in Bangladesh, where women are very active in textile industry, and that is where the Bangladeshi numbers in terms of labor force come, women's labor force come, which then lead to a better picture of the women economically, you will see that they are severely disadvantaged because they are in the frontline positions which are not technological. Those are manual, those are entry level. When massive digitization or the Internet of Things, as we now call it, happens, women will be the first to be chucked out of the industry because technology is going to replace women much faster. If you look at Pakistan also, and the number of women in the fields of science, it is called uh, the engineering, tech, science, all of those fields, you'll see that women are very small in number. Women are getting more biological or rather medical education, but when you go to engineering fields, the women's numbers hovers around 25%. And when you go further into the engineering field, you'll see that women in engineering working in the field, the number of women in engineering working in the field is just about 5%. So what does that tell you? That the the rewards of technology are going to be reaped by people who are skilling themselves. If we want our women not to lose out in terms of the bonus of technology, we'll have to upskill women. We'll have to give them digital education or technological education. We'll have to reskill them if we want better results for them. So at the moment, the jury is out. We need to find out how technology is going to be an enabling factor or a further disempowering factor.
That's very right, and that is a criticism which is generally levied on AI as it is, because there is this very legitimate concern that because of AI, a lot of people might end up losing jobs, and that is something that we do see, being raised in Hollywood as well. I'll come towards you, Bushra. I think that when we do talk about the use of technology, what is very important to then ensure is that it is used in a responsible and constructive manner, because again, you see people, more particularly reports even suggest that 72% of online harassment happens with female victims in Pakistan. So again, this is a circular argument. Number two, when she talks about the inclusion of women in STEM related fields and generally the digital industry, so to speak. Now in this regard, I do know that the Chief Minister Mariam Nawaz Sahiba has been stressing on the need for there to be greater inclusion of women in such male dominated fields. But practically, how easy or how difficult is it for us to do just that? A lot of times even women who might want to enter such fields, they might not even be very acceptable that way, because unfortunately I feel, at least to a certain extent, there is that strata of the society which still believes these professions, these careers are meant to be taken up by males.
It's just that I always feel that you need to expose people to a certain idea, then implement it. When they see it, then the acceptability comes. I remember very specifically in 2013 when I was a professor at LUMS and I joined Punjab Assembly. It came as a cultural shock to most of my friends. You see, after 2013, you started seeing younger, more educated people entering politics, and it became more acceptable. Initially, for Punjab Assembly to accept a younger, more educated person, for the females even. In fact, the most...
so you were a trendsetter that way?
I'm just generally saying that somebody needs to take that lead.
Right.
And the society first sees, gets scandalized, then accepts. These are different phases of how the human mind works with a new concept. So I generally feel, yes, things would be difficult. Things are very difficult for a female politician as well. When pandemics like Corona happened, every time a new wave would come, we would be out because we were in the opposition, and I think I got all the variants of COVID.
But you see, world over, we have seen the New Zealand's Prime Minister, she was globally applauded for the way that she actually controlled the COVID-19 pandemic.
So I'm just generally saying that things are difficult. I'm just telling you, for a female, anywhere it's difficult. It's how you facilitate the whole process. So you can't sit at home and not represent yourself or not be there because it's going to be difficult and people are not going to accept it. So it's a fight that all the women around the world are facing. We have to prioritize a lot of things. We have to, and most important thing is that we need that support system from women.
Right, and also from men, like you yourself very rightly
men
so
as well. Men for practical aspects, females, because working women always have this guilt inside, and somebody needs to tell them it's okay.
Right, which is why I put that question to Nadia initially. But you see, we are talking about so many issues now. We are talking about harassment, we are talking about violence against women, and then generally the need for us to promote women. Now, a lot of times we see, and this is an issue which generally exists in our society, not only in Pakistan, world over, whenever any woman is subjected to any crime or she is subjected to any atrocity, somehow that victim blaming culture also comes in. And that is a very pertinent issue that we must discuss. How do you, as a women leader yourself, propose can we get past that mindset? Because you see, this is an issue which is reoccurring again and again. Whenever women, they might be subjected to any kind of violence, rape, we have seen instances like these where they are blamed for the same. So how do you propose that we work past such issues, and then of course also work towards rehabilitating women back into the society, those who have unfortunately been,
Three
subjected
things
to
that I'd
violence.
like to highlight within this affair that you've mentioned. First of all, how to facilitate that process. We have had a one-stop shop solution in Multan as well, and we would want to, the CM is very adamant over the fact that she wants to replicate the same model. Why? Because if somebody is a victim and she goes through a bad experience, she doesn't need to run around places to get her medical done, to get a lawyer, to file an FIR. Everything is present.
Okay, right.
So, and yes, psychological as well. There's a psychiatrist or a life coach there to help her support this. This is just one aspect of it. Secondly, you have to understand something, Fatima. Whenever there's some kind of legislation or technology, people tend to misuse it as well. And for that matter, women tend to misuse that as well.
Right.
So there are a lot of cases where harassment at workplaces, women tend to misuse those legislation as well. So you cannot negate that, you cannot deny that, and you cannot put that out of the equation, because that really affects the credibility as well. So thirdly, women need in all this facilitation, in all this promotion, giving them job opportunity, there's a one big thing that is missing, and that's mental health. From working and proving her point, from leaving her house, leaving her children, she is under a lot of stress.
Right. Her mental health is something that needs to be prioritized all the more. That's what you're saying. I think mental health, or lack of awareness thereof, is a general issue in our society. Although over a period of time we have seen that people have started becoming more vocal about it.
Yes. So when you go back and ask me what is needed, there is no one pill that I can feed the society and the society will start. It's all about trial and error. It's about exposing, facilitating, providing. And it's an experiment that we need to do, and the whole world is doing it.
Going back to what you said initially, I think it also calls for a societal shift. It calls for policy revamp, it calls for a society shift, and it definitely calls for perhaps more responsible reporting on part of media too, especially when it comes to very specific cases like these.
Yes.
Nadia, I'll take you on board since we are talking about media. So when we do talk about media over a period of time, we have seen that women's representation in media has overall grown. We now see more actors, even producers, or even talk show hosts for that matter as well, as perhaps was the case maybe a decade or two ago. But overall, whereas at one point we do appreciate that yes, there has been greater female representation of women on our television screens, in the television and in the drama industry, but do you feel that has this not actually also translated into them being better accepted, them being given equal recognition as compared to their male counterparts? How would you look at this?
I think that appearances wise, whether it's men judging women or women judging women or women judging men, I think overall the acceptability has come a lot more. I think overall, generally, people are a lot more accepting towards people dressing up a certain way, looking a certain way. There is a lot of focus on inclusion. So that is something that I think is very positive. Of course, 100% from the time that I started in the media, things have improved a whole lot more. There are all kinds of women who are now coming into this field, who are dressing a certain way, not dressing a certain way. Of course, if there's a red carpet event and a female celebrity is wearing something very revealing, she will be criticized, but that is more based on the religious aspect rather than anything else. But I truly feel that yes, there is a lot more acceptability, there is a lot more of people feeling that okay, we can let a certain person be. Of course, social media is something which is totally different. I mean, on social media, everybody thinks that they have the right to voice their opinion, but that is a totally different aspect altogether. I feel that social media is just where these brainless trolls are sitting and they really don't have a life of their own, so that they let any other person be. So that's totally not something where I would feel that acceptability should be judged from. But yes, society in general, I think whether it's women in the workspace or women even going out for shopping, I mean, a woman can go out in jeans and even a top or whatever. She can go to Sadar, she can go to Gulf Market, she can go to Itwar Bazaar, and people are not going to judge. They're not going to really look around and turn, oh my God, this girl is wearing jeans. They're not going to do that anymore.
Right, Ms. Nadia. I'll come towards you, Ms. Bushra, and moving towards the end of the show to wrap up today's conversation. So, all in all, we have spoken about the need for there to be a collective responsibility when it comes to empowering women. But, if we are to take men along with us, how do you propose can we do just that without putting them at a defensive end? And a lot of times we see that men would want to be allies in this struggle for women empowerment. But then again, that needs to be done in a way that they are not put at the back foot. So how do you, because you've also had the benefit of being an educator, propose, can we work towards perhaps making changes in educating young boys, that too at a very young age, perhaps making the right tweaks in our curriculum, overall, training young boys at a very early age?
First of all, what you feed them, the content. Recently, I had this, the stereotypical biased views, a woman cooking in the kitchen, a man doing this, that needs to change. Secondly, we need to have interactive dialogues at every level, be it inclusive interactive dialogues where we're not putting or cornering any gender for that matter. And women also need to feel a little at ease. You need to tell them these are the rights given to them by their religion. They do not always need to fight and prove themselves.
Right. And that is the truth.
You see, that adds a lot of pressure, Fatma.
It adds a lot of weight as well.
Women always are in a race. They have to prove something. It's become the need of the hour. You need to bring the men and make them sit on the same table and discuss. We can share the finances. We just need to act as a team. You have to have these healthy... And we need to bring in the parents as well.
Right.
We need to empower. I always request the mothers, the most beautiful thing that you can give your daughter is not dowry, it's financial independence.
True.
And a degree is a step towards that. So parents need to start thinking like that. They need to invest in their education rather than getting their dowry ready or getting expensive jewelry and clothes, because that's just going to go wasted.
Right. I think the priorities need to be set straight, and
with
also
everyone.
And I think here again, I would want to reiterate, media has an extremely important role to play. The kind of narratives that you are presenting, the kind of dramas you are showing, the kind of conversations you are exhibiting, all of this can actually change and
you
break
see, media has a role to play as well.
Exactly.
They need to see beyond the business ratings.
Commercially motivated.
Yes, this is what they owe to the society. So they train the people to think in a certain manner. So they need to bring about content that matters.
Right. That's very rightly put by yourself. We're coming towards you, Ms. Fauzia, and to wrap up today's conversation. So my last question to you would be, we are talking about women, but in this strata, of course, I would want you to also talk about the more marginalized within, of course, the population of women, be it differently abled women, be it for that matter, even women belonging from minorities. So how do you, as a strong advocate for, women rights, feel can we bring such women in the mainstream? What policy changes do we need in this regard? Is it institutional strengthening that we need to work upon? Is it, perhaps revamping our education system? What are the do's and what are the don'ts of bringing such marginalized women in the mainstream?
I feel like women are an entry point into the discussion on marginalization, because naturally women are also not a monolithic entity whereby all women are alike. Some women are rich, some women are poor, some women have a physical handicap, others do not. Some are educated, others are not. Some live in rich cities and others live in villages. So women come in all shapes and forms. And when we talk about fundamental human rights, when we talk about the constitutional guarantee of equality of all citizens in Article 25, we are essentially talking about women and men, everyone. We are talking about disabilities, and it's okay to be born with a particular disability, whether it is physical or otherwise. But the society has then to provide and to make sure that it equally thinks of those people with different abilities. Also, I would call them people who are differently abled. Similarly, when it comes to women, we have to remember that my experience is going to be very different from other women who perhaps are living in the village and who are probably not even literate at some point, in some cases. So I think it's really not a discussion about either women versus men. It's not a discussion about women versus persons with other different abilities or persons from minorities, religious minority groups or other minorities. It is really about a fundamental guarantee of equality and dignity of a person. Whether it is policies or laws, they need to respect and honor that particular guarantee of the state and to ensure that it then filters down into every action that we take. We talk about mainstreaming equality, whether it is gender equality or other forms of equality. Mainstreaming starts from the design of a particular intervention. It starts from putting a particular demographic on the table if you are going to look after their interests equally. If a room is just full of men from a certain background, from a certain educational qualifications, the decisions will ultimately just benefit that particular demographic and not all the other demographics. Thank you.
Right, Ms. Fauzia, your point is noted. Coming towards you, Ms. Nadia, and moving towards the end of the show. So my last question to you would be that, overall we have talked about the requisite policy changes that we should strive towards or structural reforms. But when it comes to making those small lifestyle changes, that too in our households, what are the changes you feel that we do need to make such that we make women empower a reality? Those changes which then exist throughout the year as opposed to on this one particular day of International Women's Day.
Small change that every household should make in Pakistan to be able to support women is to just encourage them. I think encouragement is the main crux of how anybody is going to succeed in life. If you're going to encourage them, if you're going to give them positive reinforcement, I think that is extremely important. Even this boils down to even children, where if children are studying or they have an exam, they have a test, they have a certain challenge, then you need to encourage them. Apart from giving them the lessons that they need to learn, whether it's according to the subjects that they are doing, or whether it's for women, whatever work that they're doing, whatever career that they're following, of course they need to be good at what they're doing as well. But at the end of the day, if they're getting encouragement from people in their home, be it the father, brother, mother, husband, anybody, I mean, they need that encouragement, they need that support to be able to succeed. And I think that is something that uh, I think that still kind of lacks a little bit, where the men mostly in the household, and sometimes when the woman is married, it could also be coming from the mother-in-law, where they want the woman to work, they want the woman to be earning, they want the woman to be financially contributing, but they are not going to be encouraging. So that is a very big dilemma, and I think it doesn't work like that. If a woman is financially contributing to the household, then she has to be encouraged no matter what.
Definitely. On which I'll come towards you and to wrap up today's conversation. Thank you so much, Ms. Bushra. Thank you so much, Ms. Fauzia. And thank you so much, Ms. Nadia, for your time today. Well, to conclude today's show, we generally spoke about gender equality and women empowerment as it does exist in the Pakistani society today. In this regard, we not only spoke about the various opportunities, rather the pervasive challenges that women in Pakistan do come across. What is very important then to understand and appreciate at a very basic level is the fact that societies in which women are safe are those societies in which people overall intend to thrive. And if we are seeking to make women empowerment and gender equality a reality, then this is something that we do need to do collectively as a society. We need to make men important allies in this very important struggle. We need to understand and appreciate the fact that a society is definitely known by the way it then treats its most vulnerable members, which definitely includes women and girls. And women empowerment, gender equality, women rights issues overall shouldn't just construe to be related to women only. They should, in the broader picture, be construed to be human rights issue which impact the entire society at large. That's it for tonight. Until next time, take care and Allah Hafiz.